Hello, I'm Katie St. Ors, certified financial planner, tax strategist, and producer of The Deep Dive. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 37, and today we will do a deep dive into student loan debt and collections. Okay, it looks like Elizabeth and Michael are settled behind the microphones, so let's get going.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. So lots of you have been sending us material about student loan collections restarting. We've got the official announcements, some news articles, and also this really comprehensive report, Navigating the Labyrinth, which digs deep into student loan default.
Yeah, it's a big topic and definitely timely.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to really unpack this. We want to get clear on what this resumption of collections means, especially if you have defaulted federal student loans.
And put it in context too, right?
What?
Using that report to understand the scale of default in the U.S.
Exactly. And highlight the key info people need right now.
That report, Navigating the Labyrinth, it's crucial for understanding the background here. This isn't happening in a vacuum.
Good point. Okay, let's dive straight into the headline news then. The Department of Education announced today, Monday, April 21st, 2025, that the Office of Federal Student Aid, or FSA, will resume, and they're calling them involuntary collections, starting Monday, May 5th, 2025.
Wow, okay. That's it. That's very soon.
It really is, just around the corner.
And like you said, it's not totally out of the blue. These collections were stopped way back in March 2020. Because of the pandemic.
Right, a really long pause. And it wasn't just, payments on, collections on. We had the payment pause end back in September 2023. And then one of the articles mentions this. The Biden administration put in that one-year sort of shield protecting borrowers from the immediate impact of missing payments.
Exactly. So this May 5th date, it follows that shield expiring. It's the next step, logically speaking, from the administration's perspective.
Trade in your boring job for a brilliant career using Adobe Creative Cloud. Start learning now with the free trial link in the description.
Now, the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, her statement gives some insight into the thinking here.
Yeah, I saw that. She mentioned the burden on taxpayers, right? And questioned broad loan forgiveness.
Pretty directly. She's quoted saying taxpayers shouldn't bear the cost of irresponsible student loan policies. And she also questioned if large-scale debt cancellation is even legal for the executive branch to do.
So it sounds like a strong philosophical stance there, a belief that it's time to, enforce the existing agreements, especially for defaulted loans.
Seems that way. Okay, so the big tool they're starting with is the Treasury Offset Program, TOP.
Right, TOP. And this is, it's powerful. It lets the government intercept money owed to you.
Like tax refunds.
Tax refunds, definitely.
Yeah.
But also things like Social Security benefits, though there are limits on how much they can take from them.
Limits. Okay, that's important.
Yeah, they can't take everything. There's a protected amount.
Yeah.
But also other federal payments, like federal salaries, could be offset.
Okay, that sounds like it could have a major impact. And the announcement also mentioned administrative wage garnishment, maybe later this summer.
Yes, AWG, administrative wage garnishment. That's what the Department of Education can basically tell your employer to withhold part of your paycheck.
How much?
Up to 15% of your disposable pay. And the significant thing is they generally don't need a court order for this.
Wow, no court order.
Typically not for AWG with federal loans.
Yeah.
Now, you do have the right to request a hearing to challenge it under certain circumstances.
Got it. And this isn't just for the newer direct loans, is it? The older FFEL loans, too.
Correct. The announcement says guarantee agencies might also start involuntary collections on defaulted FFEL loans, Federal Family Education Loan Program.
Right, the guarantee agencies. Those were the sort of middlemen, the insurers for those older loans.
Kind of, yeah. Private or state-affiliated groups that guaranteed the loans. Now they can pursue collections, too, if those FFEL loans are in default.
Okay, so it's a broad restart. The department says everyone in default will get an email in the next 2 weeks, starting today.
That's critical. If you even think you might be in default, watch your email like a hawk.
Absolutely.
And the department is really pushing borrowers to act. They're saying, contact the default resolution group, make payments, look into IDR, income-driven repayment.
Or a loan rehabilitation. We'll get into those options more later.
Definitely. Don't wait for the collection to start.
Okay, so that's the breaking news, the immediate situation. Let's pull back a bit, look at the scale of this problem. The numbers in the materials you sent are, they're pretty staggering.
They really are. Over 5 million borrowers currently in default, according to the Ed Department.
5 million. And then another 4 million in what they call late-stage delinquency, so over 90 days past due.
Yeah. And the worry is those 4 million could easily tip into default soon.
Which means you're looking at potentially almost 10 million borrowers in default.
Almost 10 million. That's nearly a quarter, 25% of the entire federal student loan portfolio.
A quarter. Wow.
And if you connect that to the Navigating the Labyrinth report, total student debt is around, what, $1.74 to $1.77 trillion, mostly federal.
So a quarter of that massive number being in default. That's significant, not just for individuals, but systemically.
Absolutely. And it tracks with another figure they mentioned. Only 38% of borrowers are actually current, fully up to date on their payments right now.
Only 38%. So the majority are either behind or in deferment forbearance, maybe that post-school grace period.
Exactly. It shows widespread difficulty even beyond default.
The report gives some history too, right? Before the pandemic, default rates were already kind of high.
Yeah, cohort default rates were hovering around 10, maybe 11.5%. So default wasn't a new problem caused by the pandemic pause. It was already a serious issue.
And we should mention the Fresh Start initiative.
Right.
That program aimed to help defaulted borrowers, but the sign-up period for that is over now.
Right. Fresh Start enrollment is closed. And while it was active, it actually made the default numbers look temporarily better.
Yeah.
Because it took people out of default status for a time.
So it kind of masked the underlying rate for a bit.
Exactly. Now that it's ended, we're probably going to see the numbers reflect reality more starkly. And the report does highlight that delinquency rates started climbing again after the payment pause ended last year.
A warning sign.
Definitely a warning sign that more defaults were likely coming.
Okay, so we know it's a huge number of people, but what does default actually mean for someone with a federal loan? When does it officially happen?
Good question. For federal direct loans and those FFEL loans we mentioned, the general trigger is 270 days of non-payment.
9 months, basically.
Roughly 9 months, yeah. But the trouble starts much sooner. Your loan is technically delinquent the first day you miss a payment.
Okay.
And after 90 days of being delinquent, that gets reported to the credit bureaus. So your credit score can take a hit well before you're officially in default.
Right, so delinquency is that first stage.
Trade in your boring job for a brilliant career using Adobe Creative Cloud. Start learning now with the free trial link in the description.
What about private loans? People might have those too. Is it the same 270 days?
No, usually not. As the Labyrinth report points out, for private loans, it's all defined by your specific loan agreement, the promissory note you signed.
Okay.
And typically, private loans can default much faster, often just 90 or maybe 120 days of missed payments. Sometimes even other things can trigger default, like bankruptcy. You really have to read the fine print on private loans.
Got it. Much quicker timeline, potentially. So once a loan is actually in default, federal or private, what happens next?
Well, one big immediate thing is acceleration.
Acceleration.
Yeah. It means the entire remaining loan balance plus all the accrued interest becomes due immediately, all at once.
Ouch. That sounds impossible for someone already struggling.
It usually is. It basically sets them up for more aggressive collections. And then there's the credit score damage we touched on.
Right, that negative mark.
Huge impact. Default stays on your credit report for up to 7 years. Makes getting new loans, renting, sometimes even jobs, much harder.
And collection fees, do those get added on top?
Generally, yes. You become responsible for the costs of collecting the debt. Now, for federal loans, those fees used to be really high, sometimes up to 25%.
Wow.
But the report notes recent policy changes are supposed to eliminate most of those federal collection fees going forward, which is good news.
Okay, that's a positive change. But fees might still apply to private loans.
Oh, definitely. Private loan collection fees depend entirely on the lender and the agency they use. And those fees just add to the total you owe.
And what about lawsuits? Can they actually sue you?
Yes. Both federal and private lenders can sue to recover the debt. If they get a judgment against you, you could owe the loan balance, interest, and their court costs and attorney fees.
So serious stuff. You can't be jailed just for the debt itself, though, right?
Not directly for owing the debt, no. But ignoring court orders related to a debt lawsuit could lead to other legal trouble.
Okay, so default has heavy consequences all around. But the report really stresses that the federal government has some unique, powerful collection tools.
That's a key point. The feds have tools other creditors don't. And often, they don't need to go to court first.
Like the Treasury Offset Program we mentioned, TTAP.
Exactly. Intercepting tax refunds, Social Security, other federal payments. Even with the limits on Social Security offsets, it's a major tool.
And the Administrative Wage Garnishment, AWG. Also, no court order needed, usually.
Right, up to 15% of your disposable pay. directly from your employer. Again, you have hearing rights, and there are minimum income protections, like you have to be less with at least 30 times the federal minimum wage per week, but still very powerful.
Beyond taking money directly, does default affect other things, like getting more student aid later?
Absolutely. If you're in default on a federal loan, you lose eligibility for any more federal student aid, no more Pell Grants, no new federal loans.
So going back to school becomes much harder.
Very much so.
Yeah.
You also lose access to flexible repayment options like deferment, forbearance, and those income-driven plans. Though the report hints there might be future changes allowing IDR access even in default, but that's not the case currently for most.
Oh, okay. What else? Any impact on things like mortgages?
Yes, potentially. Default can hurt your chances of getting federally backed loans like FHA or VA mortgages. Makes buying a home tougher.
And I've heard about schools withholding transcripts or even issues with professional licenses.
That can happen too.
Yeah.
Schools might hold your transcript hostage, which impacts jobs or transferring. In some states, this varies a lot, but some states have laws allowing them to suspend or revoke state-issued licenses.
Like teaching, nursing, even a driver's license in some places.
Potentially, yes. It depends heavily on the state's laws and how strictly they enforce them for federal student loan default.
Okay, this all sounds quite daunting, but the good news is there are ways out of federal loan default, right? The sources lay out some paths.
Yes, definitely. There are options. The main three are loan rehabilitation, loan consolidation, and, well, paying it all off.
Let's start with rehabilitation. How does that work?
Okay, rehabilitation involves making 9 reasonable and affordable monthly payments.
Yeah.
These payments have to be made within 10 consecutive months.
9 out of 10 months. And reasonable and affordable is based on your income.
Exactly. They look at your income and expenses to set the payment amount. Think of it like proving you can consistently make payments again.
And if you complete those 9 payments successfully, what's the big win there?
The biggest benefit is that the record of the default itself gets removed from your credit report.
Oh, wow. Removed completely.
Yes, that's huge for your credit score. Plus, you regain eligibility for federal student aid and all those repayment options like IDR.
That sounds like a really good option. Is there a catch?
The main thing is, it's generally a one-time shot per loan. You can typically only rehabilitate a specific defaulted loan once.
Okay, one chance. Got it. What about the second option, loan consolidation?
Consolidation means you combine your defaulted federal loans into a brand new direct consolidation loan.
A fresh start with a new loan, basically.
Sort of. To consolidate out of default, you usually need to do one of two things first. Either agree to repay the new consolidation loan under an income-driven repayment plan.
Okay.
Or make 3 consecutive voluntary on-time payments on the defaulted loans before you consolidate.
3 payments versus 9 for rehab, so consolidation might be faster.
It often is faster, yes.
Yeah.
It gets you out of default status quicker and restore your eligibility for aid and repayment plans.
But what's the downside compared to rehabilitation?
The big difference is the credit report. With consolidation, the record of the original default stays on your credit report, even though it'll be marked as paid in full or paid through consolidation. It doesn't get erased, like with rehab.
I see. So the history remains.
Right. And another key thing, any unpaid interest on your old loans gets capitalized, meaning it's added to the principal balance of your new consolidation loan.
So you could end up owing more in the long run because you're paying interest on that capitalized interest.
Potentially, yes. That's a definite trade-off to consider. You might also lose access to certain benefits tied to the original loans, though that's less common now with mostly direct loans.
Okay. And the third option was just paying it all back.
Repayment in full. Yep. Pay the entire balance, including interest and any fees. That resolves the debt, restores your aid eligibility.
But like consolidation, the default still stays on your credit report, just marked as paid.
Correct. And obviously for someone in default because they couldn't afford payments, paying the whole thing off at once is usually not realistic.
Makes sense. So rehabilitation and consolidation seem like the main practical paths for most people. Choice depends on your priorities. Credit repair versus speed, maybe.
Exactly. And how the potential new payment under an IDR plan after consolidation fits your budget versus the rehab payment. It requires careful thought.
So given that collections start May 5th, what's the absolute bottom line advice for listeners who might be in default?
Don't wait. Take action now, immediately, like the Department of Education is saying. Contact the default resolution group.
Find out your specific situation.
Yes. Ask about rehabilitation. Ask about consolidation. Ask about getting on an income-driven plan. Talk to the specialists they have there. Understand your options.
The department also pointed to studentaid.gov in default as a place for information.
Definitely check that out.
Yeah.
And Mark Kanderowitz, the expert quoted in one of the articles, made a good point too. Borrowers need to understand their rights, but also their responsibilities.
Meaning the obligation to pay is still there, even if you weren't happy with your education.
That's essentially it, yes. Dissatisfaction doesn't legally erase the debt, unfortunately. You still need to address it.
A tough reality for some, I'm sure. It sounds like the department is trying to help, though. Planning communication, improving the IDR process.
They say they are. Planning a big outreach campaign, working on making IDR enrollment easier, maybe using tax data automatically.
Which would help.
It could, absolutely. But those are potential future improvements. The urgent thing right now for anyone in default is to make that call, get informed, and pick a pass before May 5th.
Okay, so let's bring it all together. The clear message is, involuntary collections on defaulted federal student loans restart May 5th. This is real, it's happening soon, and it affects millions.
Absolutely. And if you're one of those millions, the next couple of weeks are critical. Understand rehabilitation, understand consolidation, understand IDR. Take action, don't delay.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, our listener. Thinking about the sheer number of people in default, almost a quarter of the portfolio, and the really severe consequences, what fundamental changes do you think are needed in how we finance higher education in the U.S. to stop this kind of crisis happening again and again? Something to think about.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Okay, great. That's a wrap. I'm Katie St. Ors, and let me send out a huge thank you for listening. If you want more content on personal finance and small business, head over and find me on YouTube. You can also find me on Spotify, Amazon Music, TikTok, and Apple iTunes. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next Deep Dive podcast.